Alrighty then, welcome back everybody. Had a little problem there starting the recording, but I'm good now. Now, as you can see on the mission timer here, I saved you guys a whopping 265 days of, well, getting this guy to Laythe. Now, last episode you saw that we built this and tested to make sure it could at least fly. Didn't get into Kerbin's orbit, but that's to be expected. I mean, Kerbin's a douchebag, and with its really high atmosphere and everything. But with Laythe, the atmosphere down here on the surface is pretty thick. It's just pretty much as thick as Kerbin's. But the atmosphere stops at 55,000. Unlike Kerbin, where it stops at 68, 69,000, and you normally want to do a 75,000 orbit anyways. So here we really only need to do a 60,000 meter orbit, or 60 kilometer orbit. And as you can see, we actually have full fuel and everything. I already tested this a couple times, just little poke around tests and everything, but this is going to be the first complete test where I completely get it all the way into the atmosphere. And hold on here, I'm just gonna bring down some volumes for you guys. And okay, there we go. And resume flight, there we go. So, now on Laythe, unfortunately, we have no runways. No runways, no space centers, nothing like that. That's pretty much what the next lot of videos is going to be, is we're setting up a base down here where we're landed now, at those coordinates. Probably not that exact coordinate or anything like that, but I like this island. It's a good size and everything, and it's equatorial. And we're also going to have a station, and what's really cool is Jewel's there, got a moon that's clearly visible there. There's a bunch of moons around Jewel. There's another one here that's facing all of our rovers and flags. This is actually a really cool place and everything. It's like a little tiny solar system in within itself. Like, that's the sun, and I can actually pull out here, and it is kind of nice. We are the closest ones to Jewel, but you got other places like Val, Tylo, Bop, and Paul. And it's its own little miniature solar system with planets and a quote unquote sun. But if you look at the larger picture, we are still part of that system. But this will save a lot of fuel, and we can set up bases and stuff like that on all these and whatnot. The only problem is it takes forever to get anything from little old Kerbin here all the way out to Jewel. So what I'll be doing is these next few episodes, I'm pretty much going to skip to the point where we're in orbit around Jewel and about to set up whatever we have to set up. I will, this video, at the end of this video, go over the translational burn and everything like that to get to Jewel. It's just more math, really. It's 96 and 127 degrees. If you know what those two numbers mean, then go ahead and do it. And I've taught you correctly if you know what those two numbers are, 96 degrees and 127 degrees. From that, you should be able to figure out how to get here. Alright, but for now, let's see if our space plane is built correctly. So I'm going to throttle up here, wiggle it out of the brakes, there we go. SAS on. Now with these engines in the back, I do have to be careful when I'm pitching up, because if I pitch up too hard or something, I can easily, and I mean easily, break those off if I nose up too fast. So I gotta be very dainty and delicate with this process. But if I do it right, a little bounce there, and it looks like we can head straight up from here. So I'm gonna go ahead and nose up, put in the gear, and we're on our way. Now this does take a while, so I'm just going to chill here and talk with you guys while I smoke a cigarette. Because down here the atmosphere is actually pretty darn thick, and it stays thick for a while. I mean, we're at 1,300 meters and it's still way well into the blue over here. But we built this aircraft together, nice and stable. I don't even have to touch it anymore. I did remove some wings up here in the front because I realized if we put a payload here, it offsets the gravity and lift way too far. So I got rid of those wings and I found a happy medium. With payload on, the lift and center of gravity is perfect, and with payload off, it's close enough where I don't have to worry about it. And that is some wonderful nicotine. Alright, so we're going up. Happy-go-lucky. And as you guys have probably noticed, that there's no way this thing can dock to a station. I mean, that's tucked away. I'd have to build a special arm off the station, which I might do. But really, all this thing's going to do is go up, get into orbit, and a tug from the station is actually going to bring it fuel, take the fuel back to the station, then bring it whatever it needs to bring down to the surface for us. And it's also useful because we can take things off the surface with this thing. Not too sure what we'd be taking off the surface, but we could if we wanted to. And who do we got as a pilot today? Kalman. Mr. Kalman. I don't like that name. But as you can see here, I'm holding about a 45-degree pitch. I am going at 270, which is bad voodoo. Should be going at 90, and you know what? We're going to go at 90, so I'm going to turn this beast around. Turning the boat around. No big deal, though. We already got the altitude and everything built up. Okay. Okay. A little wobbly here. Turned it a little fast. Not that big of a deal, though. And keep us turning. We are losing altitude, but that's alright. Okay, wants to be a little wobbly. We're at 45. We're almost at 90 now. This thing's actually pretty decently mobile for the fact that it has so much fuel and stuff on it. Normally when you build a big, well, this isn't really that big of a space plane, but it's a fuel efficient space plane. When you build them like this, they're usually not this agile. That turn would have taken a lot longer with other designs. But turning it to 9, I'm just waiting for that to be on 90, so I'm steering a little bit past, just so it grabs it, and there we go, we're at 90. So I'm going to level back out, go back up to my 45-degree angle that I love so much, and we're on our way again. And you want to be going 90. I've probably explained this already in previous videos. In fact, I'm pretty sure I did in the orbit video. But you want to go at 90 because then you're rotating with the surface. Well, if you lift straight up off of, probably actually go out to a map here. If you lift straight up off, straight up like that, the planet you're on is actually rotating this way. Big arrow that way. Bam. So when you're going up, it's rotating that way, and yeah, happy things happen. Is it rotating? No. I did that wrong in my brain. Bad brain. Let me check this real quick. Okay, we're still good. When you lift straight up like that, the planet's already rotating this way. So it gives you a kick of about 200 meters a second. So if I look here in orbit, I'm pretty much just going straight up, and I'm going about maybe 50 meters sideways per second. That 200 is just from the planet already moving that fast. So when we left the ground, we inherited that 200 meters a second. If you go in the opposite direction, you're fighting it, and you have to create your own extra 200 meters a second of fuel, which we don't want to be contending with. Space planes in their own right are already pretty finicky with the fuel. But if you look, the atmosphere here is kind of weird. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's some areas that are giving off some Mach effects. The atmosphere is... I think the sound might travel slower in this... I don't know, it's weird. We'll have to bring some science equipment and really check out what's going on with the atmosphere thickness and whatnot. Because it really doesn't make any sense to me. Like, all in all, I know what I'm talking about mostly in this game, and to be honest, the atmosphere on this planet really perturbs me. I'm confused a lot. It just doesn't make sense. But once we get down to about 0.35 intake here, I'll start to level off. Remember, we only have to go up to 55,000 to get out of the atmosphere. So right about here, actually, I'm going to point a little bit more nose forward. And as you can see, we're already increasing speed pretty quick. It switches to orbit for us for some reason. but we're accelerating rather quickly, which is giving us more intake air. Faster you go, the more air you get in these. In fact, if you go fast enough, you can get enough oxygen to run a jet engine at the very edge of Kerbin's atmosphere, but you have to be going pretty much fast enough to leave Kerbin's sphere of influence anyways. Something like 4,000 meters a second with one intake and one engine will run. But if you're going that fast, you've already left Kerbin's orbit and everything, and you're off on the sun's orbit. And this is about as far as I got in other tests. I saw how fast we were going and the altitude and this. I'm like, yeah, that should definitely do it. So let's see if my brain power was actually correct in saying that that was enough speed to get us going. It should be. I'm not that worried about it. Keep in mind, though, this is still just a test. We are going to leave it in orbit once we get it there. If we get it there. If not, we have to bring it back to Kerbin and redesign. Not too heavily of a redesign, though. I'm pretty sure this will be perfectly fine. And later on, I might bring a second one out for us. So we have two going up and down. Just to save time. One up at the station, one at the surface, and they swap places every so often. Or if we have to carry a really large thing, we can make it so it docks to both of them at the same time and they both bring it down. That'll be a cool mission to do. I haven't done that in a long time. Alright, so we're at about 0.18 of intake here, so I'm going to nose down a little bit more, so we're concentrating more on lateral velocity. I pretty much just want to keep the this thing right above the brown. I kind of want to hover. I don't want to lose or gain altitude when I'm gaining lateral velocity. And this is just so that the main rockets don't have to work as hard to get us into an orbit. Get as much done as you can with these super efficient engines before you switch over to them, because they will love you for it. When we get down to about 0.9, I'm going to want to throttle down to right there. I'm going to throttle down, but I'm making sure that we're still accelerating. Okay, dropped down too far. And there we go, we're still accelerating. And me dropping it down made it so we're consuming less intake air, and the ram air intakes can actually keep up with us. We are still gaining speed, which is all we're doing right now. We're gaining speed while still at least maintaining a proper altitude. And back there's the island we left from. Well, we were headed in the other direction, then we looped around and came this way. And if you look on the map, most of this is ocean. Like, this is what we'll be seeing for a while if we decide to stay down on the surface. Okay, we're down to 0.07 intake air. We are still maintaining a climb in our altitude, which is great. 0.6, I'm going to drop throttle a little bit more. If I can keep that at about 0 or -0, -0 means there's a decimal further this way that we can't see that's in the negative, and if it says 0, it's either a positive decimal, as in we're gaining intake air at such a slow space that it won't affect that, or simply not moving, which is good. We don't really want to be consuming too much oxygen right now because we're really low on it. And our altitude, we're just about halfway through the atmosphere and everything. And one of my engines is starting to fail. We're still accelerating, which is good. But the engines are starting to kick out. Just want to get as much as possible off of these while still gaining altitude. We're pretty much minimal thrust. If we go below this quarter hash mark, the engines no longer are burning fuel. And you can see the plane rotating. That's because the atmosphere is really thin. And these aren't really helping keeping it rotated, and these aren't burning evenly. 93.5 and 80.7. So I'm going to throttle back a little bit just so they level out. For some reason, one wants to run higher than the other. I'm not sure what's going on with that. It might be one of the intakes didn't go on completely, or yeah. See, that one's at point nothing, 0. That one's at 0. That one's at 0. That one's at 0. So the only one we're getting air from is that guy, and we are at minimum thrust, and we're still gaining altitude. One intake is all we have for air consumption, and that itself is going to die. And if we keep throttling down, we can actually manage it so they flame out naturally. And we have enough of these torque add-ons, the SAS modules, to where even if one flames out, we should be able to stay stable at this low of a throttle. If we were fully throttled up, we wouldn't be able to, of course. Okay, now we're starting to lose altitude and speed, so I'm just going to go ahead and kick over to the main ones, and we're going to point pretty much straight up, and that's to boost us up to that 55,000 mark. So we'll come out here and look at this. If you look, we got a lot of lateral movement, which is great. So that way we don't use as much fuel on the lateral movement. Now, since this right here is telling us the liquid fuel of both the jet engine fuel and the normal fuel, we'll ignore liquid fuel and watch oxidizer. Oxidizer is, once oxidizer is 0, then those main engines are out. But we're pointing pretty much straight up, and we clip out, let's go up to 60. Okay, we'll time warp up to 60. And it looks like, there we go. Now we have 5,000 meters to play with to float in space. Alright, and technically we are in space right now. No problems whatsoever. If you remember, this thing could not get into space on Kerbin. It was, the atmosphere there is of course thicker, and we have to go up to 69,000 just to break out of the atmosphere. So we come down here, and now we blast. I'm going to point up a little bit just to maintain our altitude, just so we don't drop back into that atmosphere. Dropping into atmosphere is bad, blah blah blah. We all know this spiel. Pretty much just waiting for the apoapsis to pull forward of us, then I'm going to point exactly at 90 again. Alright, engines are at full, and now let's see if this thing can get into orbit for us. It looks like it can. We're almost there. Oh yeah, not a problem. Wait for the flip. 67, 60. There we go. This thing gets into an orbit and everything. That is our space plane. That is going to be our utility for getting things from the surface into space, or from space onto the surface. Since it is a space plane, it can do all those very nicely and easily. Turn off SAS so we're not using battery power, because we don't have anything on here for battery power unless we're running engines. This is what is going to charge our batteries, the engines. Those and those. If we look at fuel levels here, we got those bottom tanks are still pretty much full, and all we did was empty out these main tanks here. The jets themselves still have 44 units of fuel, and if you guys have ever played with jets, you should know that 44 units of fuel is quite a distance of travel. You could probably do a lot with that. You could probably get pretty close to the point where you could get into orbit with a full tank on these. And as I said before, what I'm going to do is show you guys how to do a quick transfer over. So I'm going to focus on Kerbin. Alright, so when we're at Kerbin, what we want to do, okay, I can't time warp to show you that way, but like I said, it's 96 and 127 degrees for your burns. So you line up the sun with Kerbin, you draw a straight line over, and we want to go 96. So 90 is straight up, and 6 is somewhere right about there. You want Joule there, Kerbin there. Okay? Pretty easy. You could draw a line there to even look at it from that perspective. But boom, straight up and a little left. Now from the orbit of Kerbin, it's going to be right about in this area here. You find the prograde of Kerbin as before, which is this way. Remember, it always goes counterclockwise around the sun that way. So prograde for Kerbin, if Kerbin was a spacecraft, its prograde would be this way, up that way. So if that is that line there, 127 is there. Alright? So right here you burn at 90. You're burning, 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 burning. It's going to stretch your apoapsis out to about here. Alright? Then once you get it there, you'll probably see an encounter. Just remember to set Joule as your target. You'll probably see an encounter. It won't be exact every time, but it'll be close enough where it'll say you have a encounter. At that point, you've float out to your ascending or descending node, depending on which one you have, and then you're going to burn up or down, depending, to align your orbit with Joules. It won't be that far off, I promise, because, well, Joule is pretty much level with Kerbin, but your burn out to that point probably won't be exactly perfect, so you want to correct there, and while you're also there, play with the blues to push and pull your apoapsis around in a circle. The blues will give you about a 20 to 30 degree shift in your apoapsis before it starts to throw your orbit all over the place. So you can use the blues to slide forward and backwards on your apoapsis without changing your apoapsis too much. Once you get that, with playing with the blues, you should get an actual encounter where you come into the sphere of influence of Joule. You float out to it. Once you're in with Joule, go to the periapsis that you'll have, burn in retrograde, and watch your apoapsis shrink down to an orbit. Once you're there, it's relatively easy to get an encounter with any of its moons. I mean, literally, it has a lot of moons. When I came in, my periapsis was out here between Tylo and Bop. It was right about here, so I burned it down until I got an orbit. Then I kept shrinking it down until it got to about the same area as Laythe. Then I let myself float down into there, down here, into Laythe's orbit. And then I figured, well, if I'm behind Laythe, then I want my orbit to be smaller, so I'll eventually catch up with him. Or if you come in and Laythe is behind you, then you want to grow your orbit out so that you slow down and Laythe can catch up to you and you'll get an encounter that way. And that's pretty much it. Next episode, like I said, I'm going to be skipping the whole part of actually getting out here because, trust me, you guys don't want to watch for the 265 days it does. Even at max time warp, it took me probably 15-20 minutes just to wait for it to get out here. So I'll be skipping that. Next time you come in, or next time I make a video, you'll see in an orbit around Joule. We'll start off with that. The first part of the station that's going to be around Laythe that's going to meet up with our space plane here. I might put an arm out so the space plane can dock like that, or I'm just going to go with the tug idea and just move whatever we need in and out from the space plane and the station. And until then, we will find cupcakes later, and you guys have a great one.